Okay, I'm trying this again. I've tried a couple of videos. I am still very depressed, extremely depressed. Kind of going through suicidal ideations, but I'm trying to stay strong, so hopefully I will stay strong. My family, I think, is a very odd intergenerational malignant narcissist, and I've let myself I've let them murder my soul. I have let them take my soul away and just murder my soul. And I'm one of those people that walks around like a zombie that you don't know what's wrong with them. But yeah, they finally got to me. And my best advice to anyone out here who might be listening about malignant narcissism and intergenerational narcissistic abuse and empaths and Jezebel spirit is definitely get away. Like, I recognized this in my mother when I was quite a long time ago. I think even I was in kindergarten and trying to commit suicide. And it wasn't until she married my father, who adopted me, that she started to like me and pretend that she liked me. And then her dream was to be a ballet dancer. She grew up in Alabama, and apparently they had this dream to be a ballet dancer. And I actually ended up being a ballet dancer with Washington Ballet Company and New York City Ballet. And that's when she liked me. But still, when no one was around, if I cut myself, like on the car, there was like steel stuff, or if I bled or had an accident, or, my knees bleeding, she'd say, "Shut up, you're just looking for attention." And I think the real narcissistic abuse, and this is textbook case, how do these people do this? It has to be a mental illness. And that's another thing I want to say, is that I believe a lot of the homeless population in our country, and children that are thrown out into the streets by narcissistic parents, it is not considered domestic violence. So it's even harder for victims of narcissistic abuse. I can only imagine, my son it's come from my mother. She tried to destroy him as well, as best as she could. So I think there is no safety net for people who do not fall into the spectrum of, oh, my husband's hitting me. It's like, hey, my family's telling me and my son to go be a prostitute. That's what they told me. Okay? They told my mother when I was 15, she said no bitch daughter of hers was going to go to college. I was accepted to college when I was 15, right? And that's what she said. No bitch daughter of hers is going to go to college. And then I let her back into my life. I was so desperate to have love in my life, so desperate to have family, and so wanting to have family that I was like on auto mode. Like sort of like a robot. Like, I can't believe these people are saying these things to me, but I still kept letting them back into my life. And I went to college when I was 25, and I was double majoring. I was doing very well. And then one morning, my mother woke up and said, "You and your son need to go be in a homeless shelter." I'm like, what? And this is the scariest thing about my story. Okay, this is scary. It's like, did my mother, or did this narcissistic personality disorder of hers, literally hate me from the day I was born and plan to, I don't know. I wouldn't say that she planned on it, but something in her subconscious really wanted it. And when my granddad died, this was when I'm in my turn 39, I called and I said, hey, he hadn't died yet. I was like, I want to go be at the funeral. And she said, nobody wants you here. I'm like, why not? What is she talking about? I was like, I promised my granddad if something were to happen to him, I'd be there for him. So then the trauma bonding comes in. Every funeral that I've had My mom will say, except for my uncles, my great uncles. Every funeral will be something horrible. So my granddad, she decided when no one was around to tell me, your son's going to be nothing more than a male prostitute. Now, my son was still a minor. It was just one of those moments. And then comes in my aunt with her, listen to this is the bizarre thing. My aunt with her 21-year-old. Well, he was like probably like 26, I think. What? But he's 36 now. He was in his 20s. She was in her 50s. She married him. She designed Star Wars costumes and stuff. And I had never met him before. He would not even look me in the eyes. He kept pushing a computer on my grandma. Make a long story short, they are now getting everything. Everything has been signed over to them. And my mother is literally dying. And this is where narcissistic abuse gets really sick. So, my mother would always tell me to walk. Like, there'd be occasions where she'd pretend to be my friend, and then I would be, for example, oh, hey mom, they had a fascination with making me walk. And I believe when you make a woman walk on the streets, that is pushing and hoping that they get raped or abused. Because normal, like, young women, she would leave me in the most dangerous situations to walk back home. I can't even go on with this anymore, but this is pretty serious stuff. I come from a very sick family, and yeah, I made the mistake of trusting them over and over again. My last mistake was when my mother said, "I'm so sorry, Michelle. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me." So I ran down. She broke 3 ribs and has stage 4 COPD. Rented a car to go down to see her. They tried to call the police on me. They tried to get me arrested. Who is they? My mother's sister, who is apparently, from what I'm researching, the golden child. My mother was raped by my uncle and put on a Greyhound bus after she graduated high school to go live with my gay uncle up in New York. Her sister was given a car. And when I went back home, it was like I was walking through a dream of a night. Like, that's my grandparents' home. I spent about half of my about a half of my childhood life there. And I came in, and after they decided they weren't going to call the police on me, that came from my aunt and her Navy boy. They're about to inherit about $700,000, and my dad's house. Yep, everything. Well, my mother gets a sick fantasy of making me homeless and making sure I'm going to be a prostitute and my son will be a prostitute. Why is she so obsessed with prostitution? I don't know. And I was working a job in Singapore, and my aunt and her best friend, Nancy Burgess Holly, who've all married men that are much younger than them, were looking at my pictures in Singapore. And these are women that have never traveled out of the country except for, I think, Grand Cayman Islands. They don't know any world experience, anything. And I was in Singapore dressed as salsa. Like, all my friends, I'm a huge salsa fan, and that's how I made my connections in Singapore. And I actually starved in Singapore. I was working for a startup company and eating bread for 3 months. And then I got this weird text message from my mom's sister's best friend saying, "We know what you're up to." Then I saw my mother on Facebook give my Uncle Charlie, the gay guy's bed, or I hate to call him gay, I should not call him that. The reason I mention gay is because I'm asexual, and it's such hypocrites. Like, here they are judging people, and my mother inherited all the money from my uncle, my great uncle, who was gay, and these people are just running rampant with this whole money thing and this money issue. I'm going off on a tangent right now, but what was I going to say? Oh yeah, so after I was accused, after they saw the way I was dressed, in a beautiful white dress. It wasn't that bad, but they saw me around. I think in salsa you get people from different cultures, so I took a picture with my friends. They're Malaysian, some were black, some were Cuban, some were white, some were Chinese, and yeah. So then I got this little text, a Facebook message from my mother's sister, the golden child's best friend, and said that, oh, I know what you're up to. Like, what the hell are these people on? Like, literally, I was so, like, happy. It was a great job, what I got. I was doing business developmental management for a amazing company. It was based on my ballet history, everything. But they just decided to degrade me and call me a prostitute. Thanks. So, and then I found out I have been disowned because I was a prostitute. Because they saw pictures and nothing. They decided to say all this stuff to me. And, but it's what scares me about the situation, what's really haunting to me about this situation, and I think this is the most important thing, and I started out with it, I'm going to end with it. Do not go back to these. If you find out you come from a narcissistic family, especially intergenerational, because that's another thing. So I went back to my grandmother's house when my mother asked me for forgiveness. She didn't want to forgive me. She wanted to make sure I was locked up in a mental institution. And she did this when I was 16 years old. She kept saying, I'm going to lock you up in a mental institution. I'm like, why? She wouldn't let me go to college, but she wanted to lock me up in a mental institution. And then I look at my sister, bless her heart, all her life, locked up in mental institutions. My mother never got a second opinion on her. And when I came back, my mother said something so poignant to me, and I'm like, holy crap, this is the golden child versus a scapegoat. My mother said, and my sister was a scapegoat her whole life, and my mother said, your sister's doing much better than you. You're the crazy one now. And this is another piece of advice. If your narcissistic parent is elderly and going through dementia and you think it might get better, and you think they might finally love you for coming to help them and care for them and actually be a family unit, that's not going to happen. They actually do get worse. But what breaks my heart the most about it is that when my mother was beautiful and kind and lovely, when she was on the other end of the spectrum of the narcissistic abuser, when I was something that she thought was interesting or I was doing well, she loved me a lot. Yeah. Anything that would... But I really don't know. I don't want to like accuse people of, when they're nice, of just doing it out of narcissism. But when she was nice, she was a wonderful person. And that's what gets me so much. She's now left. They've left her dying on a couch. I went down there after she asked me for forgiveness. So I don't know if maybe there's a split personality situation going on with the narcissistic abuser. Maybe there is a split personality, because she was begging me for forgiveness and begging me to come to help her. And when I got down there, they were like, we're going to put you in a mental institution. We're going to get you arrested. Like, real redneck, white, I can't say that word. But yes, they come from Alabama, and a bunch of incestuous, like, pedophile stuff. Like, my aunt literally married a 21-year-old. That she had been designing clothes for quite some time. But yeah, don't be like me. Don't be like me. Don't ever give them more than 2 or 3 chances. Once you see those 3 chances, it has happened so many times in my life, and I was so wanting a family. They will destroy your children. They will destroy everything if you are the scapegoat. And it was really ironic because I drove down there to help my mother, and I ended up with a $2,500 one-way car rental, and now I'm put on a do not car rental list. And this is before this happened, when I was planning to go help my mother and stay with her, and then my cousins and everyone accused me of, oh, you're just coming down here for money. You think you deserve this. You don't deserve this money. This was my mother. These people were never in my mother's life. So it's very bizarre. Well, it's not bizarre. It's odd and kind of ironic how the narcissistic abuser is able to be manipulated by other narcissists and to make sure they get their final fantasy. Her fantasy her whole life was to see me homeless and to see me be a prostitute and to see my son be a prostitute. That's why I think I hope one day there are domestic abuse places that will recognize this as abuse instead of just throwing them out on the streets and letting them be homeless, because that's exactly what my mother did. She lived in my grandmother's home after my granddad died, and my mother's house that she purchased with my father's money was kept empty for 5 years. While she would laugh, she actually laughed that I was homeless. Like, okay, so why didn't I pick up on this? I was 25 years old. She kicked me out of the house and said, go be homeless, go be in a homeless shelter. And then when she got all the money, she inherited all the, like, I think it was like about $1 million or $700,000, or I'm not sure, the house is appreciated. She relished in it. She was like, oh, because after the job in Singapore didn't work out, and after my job, well, it didn't work. It's not that it just didn't work out for me personally. It was a startup company, and they didn't pay any of the employees. And I literally went to Australia on a fluke. I was like, I really don't want to go back to the US now. And I was looking at flights, and I found a flight. It was $40. And I'm like, this has to be a fluke. Let me hit buy. And it happened to be a flight from Air Malaysia after it got shot down over Russia. So I actually got a $40 ticket. I didn't know it. I was terrified. And then I found a gentleman who I took a picture with on Australia Day, who also was very interested in my work in Singapore. And I was kind of an asset, I think. And I got a sales position, and he was going to sponsor me. So I wasn't telling people what my jobs were or anything. And so the whore, I hate to call them, these women, I shouldn't have said that. These women were two lesbians back in the day, my aunt and her best friend, with I don't know who he was, but he was some man who was in the police department. And so 20 years later, they're all up on my Facebook looking at my pictures, and I get random messages like, oh, we know what you're doing, because I put a picture of my boss and myself up. Yeah. And then I got a text Facebook message from my mother's sister, my aunt's friend, saying, I'm sorry you've been disinherited and disowned. Don't worry, it's happened to me, and may you find peace in your heart. Real sick family dynamics. If you have this in your family, run. I can talk more and more about my aunt and the weirdness of her marrying the child guy and golden child. Like, she didn't have children, but she's 60 and he's 35. And they have now made my mother write everything over to them, including my father's house. And I think my mother finally got her fantasy of seeing me and my son she wanted us to become homeless. She said it when I was 25, and I didn't listen. Also, think if someone tells you something and they're narcissistic abusers, even if you're in your family, even if they portray themselves as a mother figure and you're trusting them, run as fast as the wind. I wish I had never contacted these people again. I was on auto mode. I'm like, well, I want to have family. Best advice I can give you, if you can see this happening in your family, if you're under a certain age, even if you're under any age, go to school. Surround yourself with people that are kind and loving and supportive, especially if you are a teenager or under the age of 30. Go to school. It might be not the fun thing. Do not contact them, because they will bring you down. They're almost like devils. They will destroy your light. They will destroy your strength. They will tell you cannot have a home. They will tell you to go be homeless. And there's a huge problem. And ironically, these people are huge Trump supporters in my family, which is okay. They can support whoever they want to. But Trump is trying to get rid of the homeless. And they kept calling me a prostitute because I was wearing sexy clothes, but yet literally my aunt and her best friends and their husbands and my mother, they support Trump and they love Melania Trump, which is okay. But Melania Trump took naked pictures, so why are you hating on your own family and making them homeless because you thought they dressed too sexy? That's the hypocrisy. And the worst thing, being homeless, they finally pushed me into it. They let my father and they had lived in an empty house for 5 years while my mother knew my son. She said, go be a male prostitute. And if a child hears that, that's where there has to be a safety net in the social systems for victims of narcissistic abuse. You can't go to a court and say, hey, this was narcissistic abuse, or these people. You can go to court and say, my mother was a sociopath, or my mother was a psychopath, or my mother was a child abuser, my mother was a murderer, but you can't go and say, my mother was a malignant. It's not recognized anywhere in America, but it is. I see horrible things happening with people abusing children, like physical, like that must be like very horrible things going on. But narcissistic abuse can be much worse. Oh, I shouldn't say that. I apologize for saying that. I would say narcissistic abuse. How could I even say that? I'm sorry for saying that. You can prepare yourself to protect yourself against narcissistic abuse because it usually starts not to like when you're a child. People who abuse children are even worse. I'm going off on something. But protect yourselves, and yeah, they'll play the game with never. 5 years ago, I was told by my aunt's friend that I was disowned and disinherited, and that's where my soul was ripped out of my body. I could never go home. I was age 40 this time. I raised my son my whole entire life. I raised my baby my whole entire life, and I never wanted to make a mistake to get the wrong husband. And so I thought, okay, I'm 40. I can relax, taking care of myself. But these women were looking at my Facebook pictures and judging me. And my granddad died, and my mother inherited the money, and they decided, we're going to disown you because we think you're a whore. But the ironic thing is my mother actually came during my granddad's, right before they pulled the plugs on him or took out his breathing tube. She came and told me, your son's going to be a male prostitute. Apparently, my father was a male prostitute. I don't know. I'm not sure, but I never met him until I was 18, so I don't know the whole history behind that. But she was obsessed with making my son a male prostitute. She wouldn't let him go to... She kept saying he was evil, like right when he hit puberty, just like me and just like my sister. She destroyed not only me, my son, and my sister. And then the whole family jumped in. And now the whole family has taken away everything my adopted father worked for. My sister and I are going to be homeless. And everything is going to the golden child, which was my aunt. My grandmother sent my mother on a bus to her uncle in New York. And she bought my aunt a car to go to college. And I just found out yesterday that my grandmother has bought my cousin, who she's given everything to, her daughter a car. This is the same grandmother who looked at me when I got a job when I was going to try to help my mom and said, oh, it's wonderful, but you're going to be able to walk to work, right? She kept saying that. You're going to walk. And my mother has left me in the worst walking situations. So yeah, there's mental illness, big time. Narcissistic abuse is just really bad, and it destroys you. It destroys your ego. It destroys your confidence. It destroys your heart. It destroys your soul. And going homeless, like, another thing is very weird. 20 years ago, my mother bought 2 graves, one for her and one for my sister. She left me even out of the cemetery. It wasn't 20 years ago. This was 25 years ago. Mind you not, there were times within this time frame, like from her going hot to cold to hot to nice, from malignant narcissist to whoever knows who she was. She was nice to me, but I should have put 2 and 2 together. Do not contact. Do not. And she was able to keep me in her, her last thing was, Michelle, I'm so sorry. It was all a mistake. It was all a misunderstanding about you being a prostitute. All a misunderstanding. I'm so sorry. I drove back. She had broken 3 ribs, was on her deathbed. These same people, my aunt and these other people I've talked about, were only calling to find out if she was dead or not. So I came there. I wasn't thinking about money. I was like, oh my God, my mother finally said sorry. I get to have a family. I get to go have a family and cook and not have to worry about when you're homeless. Oh my God, I've been bitten over 60 times. I've been abused. I've had bottles thrown at me. I don't understand these people. I think they're very sick. Anyway, that's enough for me right now. Thanks for listening if you have listened to this.